Hello, hello, hello. Good afternoon. Thank you, Theo. Thank you, everyone, for joining our Don't Be Defined panel. Myself, I'm Frietas. I'm very happy to be joined by Nadia, Kokni, and Fasal and FK and Fem from NSLB. So, Don't Be Defined. I mean, we live in a world where we have fitness events that end in raves. If you've ever been to Battersea Park on a Friday night, you can't escape it. You've got talent who are hosting their own 5K runs with Diplo. You've got Central C, who's vlogging his calisthenics journey as he goes on a global rap tour. So we're kind of breaking into how the barriers between cultural pillars are dissolving, what that means for us, and also how we've got this new generation of Gen Z-led brands who are showing us what success can and should act like. So we're excited to have the guys from NSLB here to kind of break that down, talk about it, and then Nadia to help us really explore what that means for marketeers and how we should take these shifts in culture and apply it to our brand thinking. But I think it's first to kick off, talk to us about NSLB. What does it stand for? What does it mean?
Yeah, so NSLB, No Soldiers Left Behind. I'll say first and foremost, we're a sportswear brand. We've got deep ties to our community, deep ties to the music world, the fashion world, and I'll say culture in general. So we see NSLB as our platform, our creative outlet to basically express that.
And I think the interesting thing in talking about the sort of how the barriers of culture are dissolving, and you guys, you're very much not a typical brand. You do part streetwear, you're part fitness, there's part wellness movement. I've seen you recommending books.
Right.
Was this the inception from the beginning, or has this been a natural and organic flow and journey?
I feel like it wasn't intentional. I feel like we lean into what we feel is normal, what we feel is natural to us. And along the journey, we always do that. And we kind of ended up here now. So, yeah.
And you've talked a bit about, a lack of blueprint, you are moving brands where they kind of haven't been in this sort of community-led spirit. How does that impact it? Is it sort of is it helpful not having people to kind of necessarily follow?
Yeah, definitely. I feel like our audience is an extension of us. So, because that being the case, I feel like it's easy for us to kind of do what our audience want, in a sense.
I would say, I feel like in business and in life in general, you do need some form of a formula. You need some sort of framework. You can't just, be willy-nilly with whatever you're doing. So there definitely is a framework. However, we are definitely passion-led, especially if you look at our inception. We're definitely very passion-led. And something we like to look at before we activate, before we drop, before we call our community outside, we look at ourselves, we look at our friendship group, and we think, is this something we would be a part of, with the bias aside? If we weren't running this brand, would we show up, or would we be excited to take part? So, yeah.
You've talked before about the connection to the audience. I suppose ultimately, your community is the audience, and that's sort of where a lot of your value comes from. That's obviously why you have other brands approaching you. How does that, I suppose, connection and that dialogue look like when you are sort of the audience and the community are one of the same?
Say that again, sorry?
Well, what's the feedback loop, I suppose, that a lot of brands would be envious of, when ultimately the audience that a lot of brands are looking for is your community, is who you're going for. How does that impact the way you're building your brand?
I would say, like what FK said, our community are essentially an extension of ourselves. So if it doesn't make sense to me, if it doesn't make sense to FK as a person first, not as a business owner, not as someone that's trying to make money, just as a person. If it doesn't make sense to me, why would it make sense to my friend who, still lives on a council estate, or my guys who have just started running, who just about do 5K? Why would, we collaborate with X brand who are trying to launch their 50th shoe of the year? What does that mean to the guy who just started running 5K? So it's that message needs to be easily translated, to the source. It's
really interesting. Does that then impact, you're not just going through one pillar, you are doing things like side bits of wellness, you are doing things like recommending books. Is that coming through what your community are talking about, what they're saying, and you're kind of doing a live feedback loop?
I feel like that's more our interest. I feel like that's more our vices, running and working out is our vices we've used throughout our whole life, and it's kind of helped us mentally. Reading is something I feel that's benefited us from growing up as well. And we're knowledge seekers, and we feel like that's why we connect to the people we connect with. We're not for everyone, but for the people that have our interests, and I feel like we align like that. So yeah, and when we're sharing our stories or sharing a book recommendation or sharing a screenshot or anything of something that we like relate to, it's because that's what we genuinely, it's our genuine interest, and then people actually secondary, like they like it as well.
Yeah, and to an extent we are transparent, so we are on our own journey as individuals and as a group of friends. So being transparent allows people to see that progression. So me picking up this book, having never read it, I don't know what this book will teach me. You know, I don't even know if this is a good book to read. However, I'm going to show you me opening it. You're going to read through it with me, and I guess we'll come to that conclusion by the end. And so bringing people along that journey helps them realize that this is authentic. You know, it's not all being curated. You know, as well as, you know, we try to make things look, it's not all curated. It is an organic journey. And so essentially, yeah, you're on that journey with us.
I love that, because I'm sure a lot of us in the room have sat in meetings where we had reports about the importance of transparency, and it's nice to hear an actual genuine example of how that can pay off. Nadia, obviously you've led teams at JD Sports, Tommy, Hugo Boss. What do you say the impact is of when we are talking about these different barriers to culture dissolving, and it is a much more fluid space, particularly for the audience, means if you are sort of approaching your cultural strategy planning?
I think there's a couple of things. Every brand I've been, I'm so loud. Ooh. Token old person on the stage. I think what's so interesting with those sort of barriers breaking down is it just presents loads of opportunities. Might be a challenge because you have to really look into yourselves as brand owners. What does your brand represent? What are you really trying to lean into? And how can you deliver the best for the consumer? I've worked, as you said, across quite a few global brands, Adidas, Tommy, et cetera, et cetera. Each one has a distinct proposition. Each one has founding, formative DNA, which means you lean into one thing or another slightly more. And I think there's opportunities now where barriers and pillars are breaking down to really maybe keep that core, but tap into other things because the audiences are evolving. I think sometimes when you get into big brand territory, you become very introspective and you're not really thinking about who your audience base is, what are they doing, how are they evolving, how can we be credible, believable, honest, transparent, and what are the interests of the audience, right? So if I came out and I'm like, yeah, music is my thing, maybe it is, but 5-10 years down the line, if my brand has evolved and culture is evolving, what do I need to present to my audiences to be relevant to them today? How am I going to really engage with them in the best way? And which partnerships? Who are the people that can really help me to deliver the cultural message or the cultural experience that feels right for the brand, makes sense, as well as right for the audiences we want to talk to?
Yeah, I love that. I think there's an interesting kind of like, actually maybe more exciting playground where you can still focus on your sort of cultural pillar. Yes, it might be music, but you can kind of play around on the edges a bit more. If you're working with big talent, they're more public about the interests that they have. Look at Central C document his calisthenics journey as he goes on a global rap tour. You might focus on music as a pillar, but it allows you to do more playful spaces on the edges.
Yeah. I mean, brands are not, we talked about it a bit earlier, like no brand is a singular thing, right? Because no person is a singular thing. I'm sure everyone out here, you have good days, bad days, days when you're feeling super fit, days when you're feeling probably not that fit, days when you are, I'm a musician, or days when I'm an entrepreneur. You know, there are facets to a personality, and a brand is, you know, you're presenting a brand persona, you're presenting a personality that has to connect, you know, really authentically and in a relevant way to audiences, right? So there are moments where you will dial your brand up or down and the facets within it up or down. So, you know, I shouldn't say it in a room like this, but it's not rocket science. It is a lot about trusting your instinct and having your own sort of critical thought into what it means to be a brand and what you're trying to deliver. I think what you guys have sort of really eloquently delivered is like, you know, your brand is your brand. The people that interact with you, your community, your audience, feels the trueness of the things that you're doing, right? You don't do something, you don't recommend something, you're not engaging unless you believe in it. Right. And because of that, your people stick with you. And I think that's so important, particularly as you start to scale up.
And I think that's a really interesting point. We've talked about your 6 laws, and you know, if you've worked in marketing, you've always had these brand values, which frankly can obviously have a bit of flex in how they're adapted. Some brands are really rigorous about them, others can be a bit more flexible. You have your 6 laws, which essentially is kind of, you know, a brand values, and you talk to kind of what that means, what they are.
You've got them memorized.
Family is all. No individuals above their family. Comfort is suicide, which is my favorite one.
Take no backward steps.
Take no backward step, and live off the land. Yeah, those are the things that we.
Yeah, so essentially, those are our pillars. That's what we believe in. It's something that you can, I don't know, I guess in this journey of life, you travel down, a certain path, or in your career, you're making moves, you're meeting new people, you're trying new things out, you're launching products. I guess it's something that you can reflect on every month that goes by, every 3 months, 6 months that goes by. Just have a look at those laws and see like, are we still aligning with those, or how much have we shifted? Have we pivoted? Have we almost, got caught in the bright lights? And have we been, shifted off of our track? Which, at the beginning of all this, when there was nothing, when there was no interest from any type of brand, agency, no customers, this is what we said we stand on. And, just because, money's coming in now, do we pivot? Do we change? And so we like to just stay firmly on those tracks, because that's what's authentic to us.
It's a really interesting point in that, and I think for a lot of brands, when they're building out their cultural strategies, they think it's enough maybe just to focus on one pillar of culture. But what you're talking about is necessarily not hanging your hat on one pillar of culture, but hanging your hat on values and sort of themes within that then people can know what they're going to expect when they come to your community events, when they come to your channels.
Right. So the way I see our brand is almost a separate person, like a separate entity.
See?
Our brand is bigger than FEM, it's bigger than FK. I almost don't want people to look at me and see my brand, because my brand is better than me. As imperfect as I am, and as imperfect as the brand is, the brand holds these values and doesn't waver. So where I may waver, where I may get distracted, where I may take a day off, following a certain formula, the brand doesn't. The brand is the epitome of whatever we say it is. And so that's why the laws are there clearly stated for people to, this is what we're looking up to. It's almost like the big brother with its arm around your shoulder. That's how I see the brand.
And you touched on this, I suppose there's a bit of a tension in scaling for you guys. Like, how do you have such a core community you've built over a couple of years now. How do you manage that tension between wanting to kind of protect and sort of like incubate that community with your desires to scale? And maybe what does scale look like?
I feel like you've got to align, if you're going to work with brands, or if you're going to do anything that gets you on a bigger scale, you've got to make sure it aligns with like your core values, like Fem said. Like, we've had offers and we've had things in the past where they landed on our table and we've got to sit down and look at it and just think to ourselves, does it align with something we do? Does it align with something we relate to? And you've got to decide if is it worth compromising. And obviously we stand on our principles and we don't like to compromise, and we like creative control. So if we're going to work with someone, that's something that we definitely look at, and we want to sit down in a room and really see how we can make it work. And if not, then we're happy to just continue doing what we're doing.
What I like about that, if I can just add a little thing, because you're building your brand so consistently, it means it's going to have a really, really strong foundation. What I love about that is, as then the brand matures, if you have a really firm foundation and people know what to expect, and you've got not necessarily consistency, but really coherence of the brand, because you are going through the different pillars or the cultural pillars or aspects or outputs that you're doing, it's like over X time, people know what to expect. When they know what to expect, when you do take on really surprising directions or routes, it really delivers the impact. Quite often marketers like to talk about disruption. Collaborations are supposed to deliver that, but they don't, because everything is expected and nothing is new and nothing is very exciting. If you have new upcoming brands that are exciting, that are true to the beliefs of the founders and the values and everything that you guys are doing so well, so brilliantly, as the brand matures and you do take on things that are a different direction, what's amazing is it will have that cut through. I mean, one from quite a few years back, but I think people will remember, is like when Palace was Palace and it was all new and it was all happening, that Ralph Lauren collab was just like very disruptive because it wasn't expected. There are many others too, it's just the first one that came into my mind, but I think that's because the brand was really, really consistent and discerning. You guys are discerning in what you do, and I think that shows. So I just wanted to throw that in there because it will stand you in great stead as you choose to really do something diverse or different further down the line.
You're touching on, I guess, the power of saying no, right? Which you guys, I think it's really integral. You haven't done a huge amount of brand partnerships.
Yeah, I feel like it's important as well as timing as well, like when collaboration, like not doing things too frequently, and just, you could do something with a brand every month if you really want, but then you lose the essence. It's not special as it, if you do it like twice a year or once a year, it's more impactful. So I feel like that's a factor that we like to consider as well a lot when we're sitting down. We've got our quarters, we've got a plan for the rest of the year, and we like to think, where can we fit something in that makes sense for us
Yeah,
if we're going to do it. And it's not a necessity as well.
No, it's easy to say no, especially when you're starting from scratch. You know, certain numbers you've never seen on a screen before, and it's like, damn, okay, so all we've got to do is get people outside, which we do anyway. We can do that every day of the week. We get hundreds of people outside. We've got to post a couple, social posts, and then this check lands. It's like, damn, that's very tempting, very easy to say yes. But I guess that's why it's so great to have the foundation to fall back on, like, you know what, if it doesn't tick, all these boxes, it's not happening. And it's so funny because your audience don't see the no's. They don't see the offers that come in and the no's that you give back. But I guess that's what makes the yes so special, so that when the collaboration does happen, and it's been done really well, like, you can clearly see your identity within the collab. I think it hits a lot harder.
Yeah, there's an interesting post from Charlie Dark, I think a couple of months ago, when there's the amount of brands scrambling around run clubs to do activations. And just sort of like knowing your worth, and it's really important. I think a lot of people in your position might see shiny numbers and think, let's activate. I've always wanted to work with a brand partner. But it's interesting to hear the power in saying no, be really discerning and build your brand out from that. Can we talk about the power of saying yes? And I want to hear from you, Nadia, about as being in the C-suite of the marketing, and what is it that you want? So maybe some sort of brand manager in the room here who would love to work with the likes of these guys, and those who are sort of like, epitomizing this breaking down of barriers and building out communities and want to do really interesting projects with them. The power of saying yes often a little bit hard to achieve. What's it you're looking for? What's what you want from pitches if you are coming towards you in the C-suite?
So, yeah, I mean, I'm probably an anomaly anyway that I love to say yes to sort of exciting stuff. But should you be out there, if there are brand managers in the audience and you believe in a new project or a new brand, or you want to do something that you feel is really culturally relevant for your brand and how to move it forward, I mean, you have to think about your stakeholder. So, I mean, I can use myself as an example. 14-hour day, very, very busy, very time poor, and you're looking to solve a lot of issues, right? So the first thing is like, right, be really clear in what it is you're trying to propose. Really reduce the fluff. Get to the point. What problem are you solving for the business? How will this help your stakeholder sort of deliver what needs to be delivered for the overarching business plan, right? And again, if it's brand managers or whatever and you're presenting to board level, potentially you have a director or a VP above you. Bring them on the journey and get their endorsement. Sometimes, people try, they've got brilliant ideas and they want to skip a level. Never works out too well. So for me, I think it's like, you really need to be sort of convincing. I'll give you an example when I was at Boss. Rotational door, lots of ideas, big marketing. I came to, I think it was the second or third iteration of the brand campaign. Now, the first season, big impact. No one was expecting things. The story was new. The cast were new. Very exciting. Second season as well. By the time we got to 2023 spring, we still had this Be Your Own Boss campaign. Brilliant campaign, but we needed something to recapture people's imagination. So everyone's thinking, what can we do? Obviously, we have to run all the different channels that we have to. And it was our digital and innovation team who came in with an idea. Burst through my office door. We've got an idea. We really want to do this thing. What is it? Giant holograms. You can Google this afterwards. You'll see we launched spring 2023 with holograms bigger than Tower Bridge or whatever. Now, I could have just been like, no, it's too risky. It's a technology we've never used before. Why would I do this? It's quite expensive, et cetera, et cetera. But the team came in. First of all, they understood the assignment. We can solve the problem of newness and attention and novelty toward the consumer, and various other things that were on our Claim 5 sort of direction. We can help deliver all of these things. But importantly, they came as a team, so they already had each other's buy-in into stuff, and they were really believing in the thing they wanted to pitch, right? Take accountability. It's not good enough to sort of push an envelope over the table or put a PowerPoint and just hope for the best. Really demonstrate that you've used your power of critical thought to assess the opportunity, and what you're putting in front of that stakeholder is something that you would really fight for and that you believe in. Equally, the leader needs to create an environment where you can try new things, take learnings if it doesn't quite work out, but celebrate the team if it does. So I was very fortunate that I had a team that was very confident, that could come in, present like that. And then ultimately we did celebrate their win because they pulled it off and it was major.
Yeah. I think that point about sharing the problem, particularly with the creative partners, is really valuable. And so they're invested into it. They know what they need to deliver on. We're at time. Thank you so much for joining us. I think there's a lot to be taken on there. Hold tight your brand values, act more like community groups, and obviously share your problem with your partners, and that's how you unlink.
Can I say one final thing? I don't know if this came through. Sorry, guys, I know everyone wants to rush off to somewhere else. I think when you're a brand owner and you're confronted to work with amazing people, and you bring people in, because at JD or wherever, it's like, guys, if you're going to bring in people who are dynamic, bold, doing new stuff, they excite you, right? Please, if you do get it past the stakeholder, trust the partners. If you're bringing people in to talk to a community, or you're bringing people in because they're specialists in a certain type of culture or connectivity, it's brilliant because people get excited at the beginning. We got these people in, it's going to be amazing. Yeah, that's really, really good. The hard work starts after that because you have to manage your stakeholders and your budget and your people to let your partners handle the problem with you. You have to trust them to do what you've assigned them to do. Sorry, I just really wanted to
Important points.
put that
Here,
one there.
trust your partners. Thank you all for coming.
Thank you.